Are you a businesswoman who is finding it challenging to get your ideas across and make a point? Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results with Elizabeth Bachman, a podcast dedicated to helping women get the visibility they want, whether making a speech or talking in a meeting. Every week, get valuable lessons from Elizabeth or learn from her roundtable conversations with experts and speakers on how to make a difference, not just a point. On to the show with your host, Elizabeth Bachman.
Hello, and welcome to Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host, and this is the podcast where we talk with experts from around the world about leadership, communication challenges, and visibility, and international communications, especially. Today, I have a really interesting discussion about communication challenges with Shiran Weitzman. Shiran is based in Tel Aviv, Israel, and his company, Shield, monitors electronic communications within corporations to help people behave better, to make sure that there isn't any harassment. This is an issue which I've dealt with in person, but I haven't really dealt with on a digital side. And so I thought it would be really interesting to bring Shiran in here. And he's a very smart, very interesting guy. The official bio is that Shiran Weitzman is the CEO and co-founder at Shield, which is a regulatory software company specializing in eComms record keeping and compliance data analytics. Shield helps organizations in reducing the risks associated with electronic communications and to uncover hidden insights such as inside dealing, unlawful behavior, privacy matters, all of which results in greater operational efficiency and reduced costs. Shield is currently being used in top-tier banks, leading tech companies, and large organizations with promising and successful results. Shiran has over 15 years of technology and management expertise, mainly in the financial services vertical. He was previously the head of sales at TM Group, where he was in charge of the company's primary Tier 1 bank accounts. Shiran brings to Shield many years of experience as a trusted advisor and subject matter expert in the financial compliance market. Another testament to his expertise in the field is when he joined the Forbes Finance Council as a member in 2020. He holds an MBA from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and a BA in computer science from IDC Herzliya. With his deep experience in financial services and electronic communications in the workplace, Shiran is ready to extend a helping hand and inspire your audience. We certainly had a very inspiring and interesting conversation. I have a feeling that we only scratched the surface. So stay tuned. Here comes the interview. Shiran Weitzman, welcome so much to Speakers Who Get Results.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Happy to be here.
Well, I really love being able to interview people about communication, because fundamentally communication is what my whole business is about and what this whole podcast is about, especially around leadership. And you have some really interesting things, really interesting areas that we haven't discovered yet. So the cool thing about being a podcast host is I get to learn from smart people. So I'm happy. But before I get into the many questions I have for you today, let me ask you, who would be your dream interview? If you were to interview someone who's no longer with us, who would it be? What would you ask them? And who should be listening?
I would love to have the opportunity to have a chat or an interview with Steve Jobs and ask him so many questions about decisions and entrepreneurship and innovation and how to drive innovation and how not to drive innovation. And so many things that such an inspiration with some challenges, of course, but that's a person I would love to. Of course, he's no longer with us, but
yeah. Oh, well, good. That would be fun. I always think I would like to interview Steve Jobs about what it was like when he was a no person. You know, he was like big, famous, and then suddenly he was out, and then he came back. And I would be curious to hear what it was like for him to not be the man in demand and then turning around and bringing it back.
yeah, it's you can also go to the early days. How was it to fight everyone there, against all odds and establish something like he did? And but how is it to be a front runner, basically? How is it to be someone that almost need to prove or to create a category from scratch? That's well, that's something that we want a little bit to do in the future, but yeah, still far from the big Steve Jobs.
Well, that leads me to my next question, which is, you are the founder and CEO of Shield, shieldfc.com, and you have, to a certain extent, invented something completely new. Tell us, especially for my people who don't live and breathe software, for my listeners who aren't software types, what is Shield and why was there a need?
So Shield is a software company established 4.5 years ago here in Tel Aviv, Israel. Our goal from the beginning, and we've actually implemented it, was to create a platform that will help firms. We currently focus on financial firms, but firms to manage their overall challenges from one side and insights coming out of their workspace electronic communications, right? Or workspace or workplace electronic communications. So we are basically looking on two sides of the equation. We are looking on risks in the workplace and insights, right? And for some, right, for financial institutes, electronic communication are considered as risks that requires monitoring. Why? In order to prevent market manipulation or to help the regulators to further investigate, etc., etc. Basically, they are saying that any two persons or more that are exchanging ideas over a communication platform, it can be a video or collaboration platform like this, or via email or social media or WhatsApp or even financial chat, right? Any means of humans communication via audio, text, chats, anything is a potential, of course, is in the fundamental of business in modern communication in our day-to-day life, but it's also a potential ways to exchange ideas that can lead to some bad actors, some colluding, some market manipulation, or on the other hand, some harassments, some fraud potential, etc., etc. Now, in the digital markets of today, things are noticeable in the transaction, but many of the things that we are doing on the day-to-day is happening in our communications. And that's unstructured. And the definition of something that is unstructured is almost impossible to put it in an equation. So it requires human behavior analysis, right? It's called behavioral analysis, the study. The behavioral analysis in order to understand if something that we or someone else was communicating about is outside of the norm or is outside of the policy or what the organization allow or against the law even.
Let me ask, the first question that comes to mind is, isn't that spying?
So the answer, the quick answer is absolutely not, right? It's actually the opposite if you think about it, right? Because Spying, let's just define spying. Spying is looking without the other person knows, right? In order to gain knowledge. It can be espionage, it can be business knowledge, doesn't matter. It's in order to gain knowledge without someone else knows. What we are doing, we are helping the firm, let's say a bank, to enforce a regulation or to enforce a regulation, but the regulation that goes to the bottom of it, right? The regulation is there and is requiring everyone in the organization to maintain transparency in the market, because they understand that they have the potential to influence the stability of the market.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, we are helping to prevent financial crime and to prevent or to help against illegal activities that can happen based on employees' activities or someone else's activities. But that's the course of what we are doing. We, unlike espionage or unlike anything else, we are not monitoring something that the employee is not aware of or the firm is not allowing. So it's all working according to the policies of the firm. That's the difference.
It's like all those emails you get that have down in the signatures, this is communication that may be monitored, et cetera, et cetera. We take it for granted. But I figured I should actually raise that question here, because we do take for granted that there are cameras everywhere and that people are listening everywhere. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's not.
And you know what? We have often been asked by, investors, not by customers. Customers fully understand what we are doing, basically. But let's say investors are asking us, yes, but people know that they are monitored. So, why do you think that you will be able to catch something? So, first of all, this is the fundamentals and the baseline of human behaviors, right? Humans, us, we are always going back to to what is straightforward for us, right? To what we know, what's easy for us. And if I have a specific channel, I will do that. I'm forgetting after a week that I'm monitored. Even if I'm not forgetting, not always something that I'm doing, I'm thinking on purpose that, I'm going to commit a crime. Because if someone thinks that he's going to commit a crime, he's doing something much wider. But the fundamental of what we are looking at is not people looking for to do a crime. It's people that are a little bit shortcutting, right?
Yes.
Are shortcutting things, and you need to straighten them. Only from time to time you see cases where you see the criminal activities, right? But most of the cases, people are trying to cut corners, to
get it
do
done
things
faster. Yeah.
to get a little bit advantage. They don't see themselves as criminals. They don't see themselves as doing something wrong or thinking structurally on, now I'm going to do the Ponzi scam of the century. That's not what most of them do. There are that are criminal mindset. There we need to catch as well. But most of the things are in the edges, right? Edges are also problematic, but they are on the edges, right? And they also need to be straightened in order to create, I would say, a culture of straight work.
Of direct, straightforward.
Yes.
I have so many questions for you. Let me start out with, over the last 2 years, plus more than the last 2 years, we've been working from home a lot and working digitally around the world. I talk to people around the world every week. Has that made communication, let's say, good behavior or bad behavior, has it made it better or worse?
I think that we are, first of all, you're absolutely right. We are in the age of remote work or hybrid work, as we want to be, because we want people to come back to the office. But it is this. I pull out some statistics before this conversation. So it appears, just to put things in perspective, that remote working is a deal breaker for almost 50% of the population these days.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
50% of the population. So that's one thing. The second thing is that you would assume that working digitally, right, or working remote will kind of make redundant some behaviors, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, we see, I just pull out this, it's very fresh, and it was presented in CNBC, that 38% of employees, of workers, are still experiencing harassment in the workplace. They've just simply been done remotely. Therefore, we see, and it's like a part conclusion because we need much more data in order to reach it, but people haven't changed the way they behave because of the move to remote work.
Alas,
if I have to guess, it just made everything a little bit more eccentric, right?
Mm-hmm.
So people that were behaving on the edge of harassment are probably allowing themselves to be a little bit more harassing when they are remotely, because in the comfort of the home office, they don't see they don't have colleagues that are looking at them and making them feel uncomfortable, right? People are, when they are not in a social environment, among people, are a little bit more loose, right?
Yeah.
And many other things that happens, of course, including all sorts of mistakes, or people are dressed up differently, etc., etc. But I would say that it makes the challenges of what we are dealing with even much more present in today's work. And this is here to stay, right?
Yeah.
This is here to stay. This environment, like we are discussing now, like we are doing with our employees, with investors, with customers. This, and internally, of course, mainly internally, this is here to stay. Google and I would say Microsoft released the numbers. The difference between March 20 to March 22, 200 times more communication via Microsoft Teams as a single chat.
Yes.
Or as a single collaboration platform. 200 more, or 200x. That's the ratio. It's amazing.
One way to think of it is I live half the year, so 2 seasons a year, I live in a small village in Austria and in the mountains, and basically everybody knows everybody. So people really pay attention to what does their front of their house look like, because the neighbors all know, and if you're not cutting your grass, someone's going to pay attention. Whereas living in a big city, which is the other half of the year, I live in a big city, if you don't know your neighbors, then people will just drop their garbage off on the street because nobody knows them, they don't know them. There's that anonymity of big city anonymity. And I think that's an interesting metaphor for the way we have been when we're working remotely, as opposed to in the office where people can see.
Yes. And again, you would think that harassment or sexual harassment wouldn't take place on a chat platform. I thought that, right? I was certain that I would not reach something like that, but then we have seen it. It happens. People are behaving, it takes their behaviors to, they allow themselves much more when they are in the comfort of in front of their Zoom. And it says a lot about adopting to technology and about what can be achieved. And we think that this is something that would still need to be developed around the world. And by the way, people's communications is evolving all the time as well, right? New channels of communication, new methods of communications. The future, I don't know if it will happen or not, but the future of the metaverse, the future of people communicating in the virtual environment and having a discussion or an interaction that can be all sorts of the interaction with visual and smell and touch via all sorts of sensors, brings with it challenges as well.
Yes, because people are still people, as you said.
People are people, exactly. And we are not able to program them to behave, because then, first of all, it will be less fun, but it won't happen.
So if you are a leader, since this podcast is really here to support leaders, what can you do in your organization as a leader, as a C-level? How can you handle workplace misconduct in our digital world?
First of all, I would say that most of the organization, I'm talking 99.99, are probably not handling it at the moment because it's still early. But I'm saying to leaders, first of all, know what's happening inside the organization. First of all, get a vision, right? Mm-hmm. Get a visual of what's happening. Everyone are investing heavily in cyber, right? Because they want to know. It's for the single issue, right, that will happen that can create damage.
And by cyber, you're talking about cybersecurity, right?
Cybersecurity, right. Yes. And we are putting fences and defenses and active and passive defenses in order to protect our customers and to protect our environment from a single attempt to steal or to do damage, right? Mm-hmm. That's happening in cyber. We need to treat our virtual workplace in a similar way. We need, first of all, to protect our employees from the bad actors, right? Mm-hmm. We need to know what's happening, right? I'm saying to, I'm always telling it to people, I want to know if something bad is happening in my office, right? Mm-hmm. I'm giving people all sorts of capabilities, right? We are providing them a laptop and communication channels and flight tickets to go to customers and all sorts of. We want to know if something happens during the job, right? If something happened to them. Why shouldn't we want to know if something happened in the virtual work as well? Mm-hmm. I don't know. When people are communicating now, and they are like, for us in the organization, there are 2 days a week that they are communicating. In most organizations, it's probably between 2 to 5 days a week that they are working remotely, fully remotely, right? Mm-hmm. How do they know what's happening in these huge organizations that they have? And the organization can be 20 or it can be thousands of employees. They have no idea what's happening there. Suddenly, someone can get, a claim. Mm-hmm. Someone can get, I'm going to the risk, but there is also positive sides that we can get out of it. I want to know, we're talking about productivities, mm-hmm. right? By the way, it's not a conduct, but we're talking about productivity in the age of remote work without spying on employees, right? How can we reflect? And it's a challenge. It hasn't been resolved yet, but how can we reflect to the management, to the employee as himself? Hey, we trust you. Work from wherever you want. There is at least in Israel, there is a thing now that we want to be able, or employees wants to be able to work from anywhere in the world that they want. Mm-hmm. Trust us, we are working based on KPIs. Fantastic, right? How can you really measure this?
Mm-hmm. So what does your system do?
So currently, we are looking at risk factors, right?
Okay.
And we are helping managers in the area of conduct, because we also work with financial crime and market manipulation. But mm-hmm. When we talk about conduct, we are able to flag employees and specific communications that may lead to or are reflecting employee conduct or mm-hmm. some sort of conduct. It can be fraud, it can be bad language, it can be harassment, it can be bullying in the workplace, it can be all sorts of, it can be gifts and entertainment if it's not allowed. Basically, you have a policy in the organization. This is a way to enforce it without spying. I would like to prepare some red lights for the organization so they can decide the thresholds. Some can say, look, I don't care. Let people get the freedom. They can curse, they can do whatever they want. In my organization, by the way, I'm fine with it. But when something really bad happens, right, I want to know on the spot. I want to know on the spot, because then it can be dangerous. It can be dangerous and a legal exposure to me as an organization, or it can be dangerous for the person that, was abused.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. As you were saying earlier, it's often not a big deliberate crime. It's the little things that add up. And where do you draw the line? Where do you say this is not good enough? Is it just a new question? Is it different for different organizations or different industries?
I have to be honest and say that we don't know yet, because it's so early in the days that very few are implementing it. It's something that I believe it's the new normal, that will start to get much more standardized during the future years, the years ahead. But I would say if I have to give an answer, I would say I don't think that there is a difference between organizations, because people are people, and everyone that are is communicating, something happens. Just recently, talking about scandals, right? There is an organization here in Israel that is a very feminist organization, right? And it's endorsing flashing out sexual harassment, etc., etc. And it's all very active in this domain. And recently, someone very senior in this organization was sexually harassed another person in this organization, and everything happened via WhatsApp.
Oh, yeah.
And that got published. So the brand, first of all, and reputation of this organization is crushed. My heart with them, but it will be very difficult to fix it. Second of all, I think that people, if something happens once, it probably happened in additional times.
Right. Good point.
Nothing is singular, right? A certain behavior of an individual can and will happen again. Myself, if I was the CEO of this organization, I would like to know. Now, it's impossible to stop people, right? It's impossible to stop people from doing all sorts of things. But I would like to be able to do the maximum in my power. And my power is limited, right? But my power as the CEO of an organization is saying, hey, guys, internally, please communicate via this X, Y, and Z, right? And please note that while you're communicating, we are here to maintain the order and the
politeness, manners.
The manners and the integrity of this organization and these communications, okay? And if something happens, again, think about it, this is culture, right? It's not only technology. If something happens, so this is what I'm doing as an organization, right? I'm here, I'm providing you tools, but I'm also helping you and helping you or everyone else and myself to maintain the integrity of these tools and my organization and the culture of my organization. And if something happened to you in an unmonitored channels, right? Please report back, because this is the culture thing, right? Something like that was, if something, a process or a system or, a culture like this would take place in that organization, I cannot promise you that it won't happen, but the chances are that it would be dramatically reduced.
Yeah.
Because there is a culture of, hey, we don't tolerate these kind of things, rather than it's a Wild West. It's a very, we are predators and all sorts of behaviors that we know that happens, right? That are happening. And I think that it's a bad behavior, right?
Yeah.
Bad behaviors of people, but people are people, and we are not going to change people. And it's impossible to screen people and to do this kind of a deep analysis of who they are and what is their secrets, right?
Yeah. Well, and times have changed too. So things that used to be just a little joke, and then, someone would say, "What's the matter? Can't you take a joke?" When they've actually said something hurtful, and learning that indeed is hurtful, and also learning to speak up. I mean, I think about times in my younger years where some of the terrible bosses I've worked with, where I and those around me just put our head down and tried to get on with it, get the project finished, just get through this. That now I would speak up. But in my younger years, I wasn't as sure of myself, and I was dependent on those people for my income. So I would not be challenging them. That's also a very female thing, I think, having been trained to not make a fuss, be the nice girl.
And thankfully, this is changing, but not enough, right?
Well,
it's still, I'm sure that it's still happening, and and we can take it even further, Elizabeth, when we can talk about the political gaps and the level of communication that happens in between people and within social media that can easily go and flow into our workplace.
Yes.
Yeah. And then it's come.
Then it gets
very, a whole can of worms they can open up, and it creates all sorts of other challenges.
Yeah, so exactly. Well, Shiran, we're almost out of time. I could talk to you for hours, but let me ask, if you were a leader, if you wanted to learn more about the sorts of things that you're talking about, where does one start? What is one thing the listeners could do when they're listening?
First of all, I'm welcoming everyone to reach out if they want and to have a chat. But we have, because it's a new kind of domain, right? Because everything is changing so fast, accelerated dramatically by the pandemic. There aren't a lot of available resources and researchers around it, right? And we have picked it up and created a new website called The New Normal, right?
Okay. We'll post a link in the show notes.
Yeah, I will send the link. We are trying to upload as much information as possible that are related to this domain and subdomains. And I can promise that we will keep developing it and try to be to bring some thought leadership and thought ideas into the market. And again, not educating the market. We are too small and too humble to educate the market, but try to influence a little bit and try to bring some innovation and show that there are something that can be done, right? There is a price, there is a cost for something, but things can be done to create, I would say, a more relaxed way. People feel more secured in in what they're doing, right? And they know that they are being heard, and they know that if someone was doing something, there is an evidence. There are all sorts of new phrases and new terms these days, right? Gaslighting and at the end of the day, the good thing about the digital world, there is we can create evidence for everything, right?
That's great. Okay.
And again, we're not trying to spy, we're trying to create a normal organization for people to collaborate and feel safe within them.
I love that. So that's a great way to think that you're creating an environment where people can feel safe.
Yes.
When they feel safe in their communications and do that. I heard something just earlier today about if you make a mistake, apologize and how can I make it right? And don't explain, just apologize. How can I make it right? And move on, which I thought was really excellent advice. And I've made all the mistakes myself, so I've been there. Shiran Weitzman, thank you so very much for joining us on Speakers Who Get Results. I will be posting all your information in the show notes, and I have a feeling I'm going to come back to you in a couple of months and ask you some more questions, because we're in a time where things are evolving and we don't have a new normal yet. The new normal is still being created.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for having me. It was wonderful.
This has been Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host. And let me remind you that if you're curious how your presentation skills are doing, you can take our free quiz at speakforresultsquiz.com. That's www.speakforresultsquiz.com. And that's where in about 4 minutes, you can find out where your presentation skills are strong and where perhaps a little bit of support could get you the results you need and the recognition you deserve. And if you score high enough, you can have a free conversation with me to discuss these results and what the next steps might be. Once again, this has been Speakers Who Get Results. I'll see you on the next one.
We have just concluded another great episode of Speakers Who Get Results with your host, Elizabeth Bachman. If you got value from today's episode, please feel free to share us with your friends and colleagues. You may also visit elizabethbachman.com for additional resources. Be sure to tune in every week for new episodes, and thanks for tuning in.